I'm going to tell you about, let's see, almost 5 decades of mineral collecting, primarily but not exclusively in New Mexico. My story starts back in the early 70s. This is a picture of myself there on the left and a few mineral buds. This is at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. We were all in the geology department, and you guys you recognize the guy. Oops. Recognize the guy there on the right?
I do now.
Anybody?
Tony
Potacek. Yep, that's Tony. With let's see, looks like you got a cheap cigar and some jerky in your pocket. I'm swilling cheap beer. You know, it's just Slim Jim, just part of the deal. So I didn't. We were in the geology department together. I knew nothing about minerals. I got to know Tony. He was already a pretty serious collector even back then, and started hanging out at his house, looking at his stuff, and decided it was really neat. And so we started doing collecting trips, into various places in New Mexico and Arizona. Usually more at night than during the day, frankly, like a lot of us have done. And I just got hooked. So. Graduated from UNM in '74, and I worked in the mining and exploration industries for about 10 years, including a 2-year stint at the Henderson molybdenum mine in Colorado. So this was a selfie that I took in the winter of 1976 at about 2 in the morning, 3,100 feet below the surface, thinking, I really got a degree for this? But it all worked out fine. So I did that kind of work until about the mid-'80s. A lot of us, there was a big downturn in oil and gas and minerals, as a lot of geologists know, and a lot of us washed out of this kind of work. And fortunately, the environmental assessment and remediation industry was really starting to fire up, so a lot of us transitioned into that line of work, which I did for about my remaining 28, 30 years, something like that. Okay, so I'm going to take you to 4 locations. Let's see, is this, looks like this highlighter's not working. Oh, it's the top one, okay. Yeah, okay. First we'll talk about this Pine Canyon fluorite deposit. This is southwest of Silver City. And then we're going to go to Cooks Peak, which is north of Deming, New Mexico, and then over to the Sierra Blanca smoky quartz locality, and then we'll end at the Blanchard mine. Okay, the Pine Canyon deposit is in the Little Burro Mountains. It's, as I said, southwest of Silver City in Grant County, New Mexico.
It takes a little getting used to.
It does. That's the, yeah.
It doesn't work in the margins, so you got to be right in the middle.
I thought I was, okay. Yeah. Let's see, where was I? Sorry about that, folks. So the Pine Canyon is right here. This is these are the Little Burro Mountains. It's right on the southern end of the burrows. It's about just yeah. You got the touch.
Yeah, right and left. Yeah, I'm ambidextrous.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a Google Earth image looking in kind of an easterly direction. There's the location of the actual deposit. That's the Freeport Tyrone copper mine open pit there in the near distance. That would be, I believe, that's the tailings impoundment for the Freeport's Chino mine, and that's the Chino mine itself in the far distance there. A little bit about the geology. Fluorite is the only mineral of interest. It occurs in these northeast trending, near vertical, relatively thin veins that are emplaced in faults in Proterozoic granite. The fracture walls are coated by fluorite on both sides, and when there's open space, the void is filled by a sticky, tough pocket clay. The age of the fluorite mineralization is uncertain, but probably 35 to 44 million, somewhere in there. Oh, there it goes. Oop. Now let's see, I gotta go back.
And the smallest button on the bottom.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe only that the computer will be more.
No, but it doesn't matter if you point it at the computer. It's on a bandwidth. And where did you go forward?
Let's see, go back. Let's see where we at here. Okay, so then next. Okay, yeah, that's right. That's good.
You want me to just bench? Or?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do that. A little bit of history about this place. It first came to the attention of mineral collectors in the 70s when famous Arizona field collector Dick Jones staked a claim on the deposit. His claim paperwork indicated that it was in Catron County, which is actually north of Grant County. Fast forward to 1983, and Ray DeMarc and others did some research, checked his paperwork, and did some field work, and actually determined that the deposit was located in Grant County. So in 1989, there was a New Mexico issue of the Min Record. A lot of you may remember that, and the Pine Canyon deposit was one of the featured localities in that magazine. Then 1994, this is when I became involved in this, became a claim partner with Ray. We did an excavator operation. Ray and I teamed up with Mark and Joe Kilbasso and Mike New out of Arizona. And I'll show you a couple of pictures of that dig. It was very successful. We literally found thousands of fluorite specimens. After we concluded that dig, I and my longtime New Mexico collector, Tom Massis, we decided to hang on to this claim with the idea of perhaps going back at some point in the future and trying it again. Which we did in 2019, and I'll talk a bit about that too. Currently, myself and Tom Massis continue to hang on to this claim, so uncertain future at this point. This is the 1989 issue of the Min Record with this really nice Pine Canyon fluorite specimen featured on the cover. This is a Ray DeMarc specimen, fairly, actually not a big piece, maybe a small miniature. Now it resides in the collection of Jeff Starr over in Dallas. Okay. Here's a very nice fully formed octahedron. This was picked, this is a Wendell Wilson photo. It was in the 1989 Mineralogical Record article, a very, very fine piece from Pine Canyon that Ray dug in 1992, prior to the 1994 operation. Okay. This is some of the folks that we teamed up with. That's Joe Kilbasso, a longtime mineral dealer, now lives in California. Mike New there in the center, and Mark Kilbasso. So we were at the property for about 2 weeks, digging the place up with this medium-sized excavator. Okay. That's a picture of myself. I'm pointing to what we've done here is peeled the hanging wall to expose this fairly thin fluorite vein, and then pull the fluorite mineralization away from the footwall and put it into these buckets. And as you can see from this picture, we've collected a lot of material here. And so the trick is to fill the buckets full of water, soak the clay off next, and this is what you get. Once the clay is removed, every single piece that you get from here looks like this. It's a dark purple octahedral fluorite that's covered with about a millimeter thick layer of Jersey quartz. It's got to be removed chemically to expose the fluorite. Okay. A few examples. This is from the 1994 operation in my collection. Again, it shows this really distinctive scalloped surface of this fluorite. I would speculate that may be due to perhaps this clay interference while the crystals were growing. I'm really not sure. It's pretty distinctive for the locality, though. Okay. And here's another one. One of the lower veins on the property produced these distinctive, smoother-faced dark purple octahedrons. Didn't produce a lot of these, but when we got good ones, as you can see, they make really nice specimens. Okay. Okay, fast forward. This is the 2019 operation. This is a drone shot. So let me see that, Chris, for a second. So in 94, we basically really dug up this whole central area and also did quite a bit of digging down here. This is where those sharp octahedral specimens came from. So our idea was to go back in 2019 and pick up where we left off in 94 and follow these veins out, hopefully along strike to the southwest and the northeast. And hopefully we'd find a lot more material. What happened was we found the veins, but they were completely tight. There was no open space at all. So we had pounded this place a lot harder in 94 than we realized. So we spent basically about a week out there and dug up every place that we could, see might have possibilities within the permitted area that we were going to be allowed to dig in, and just decided this is just not going to work out. So we pulled the plug on it. So in 94, we found, like I said, thousands of fluorite specimens. In 2019, 0. Not a single one. Except for just massive chunks, which we weren't interested in. So, that's mineral collecting for you. It's the way it goes. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Okay, now we're going to go to the Cooks Peak Mining District. Again, this is north of Deming, New Mexico, in Luna County. Right there. Yep. It's borrow that for a second. This is for those of you who know New Mexico geography. This is the Black Range. So Cooks Peak is right down at the south end of the Black Range. Google Earth image looking in a southerly direction. There's Cooks Peak, which is it's about an 8,000-foot peak, a very prominent geographical feature in that part of New Mexico. And there are two districts. The Cooks Peak district is northeast of Cooks Peak, and the smaller Jose subdistrict is northwest of the peak. And I'll show you specimens from both places. Okay. Geology briefly. The ores consisted of argentiferous galena, sphalerite, cerussite, minor smithsonite, and a gang of pyrite and minor fluorite. The Cooks Peak is a granodiorite stock, 39 million years old. It was intruded into Silurian and Devonian, about 400 million year old Fossilman dolomite and Purchase shale. This was never a big district by any means. These were small, high-grade pods of sulfide ore that were emplaced in this Fossilman dolomite directly below an impermeable Purchase shale dam. This is a model that you see in multiple places in southwestern New Mexico. Okay. Brief activity of this area. From 1876 to 1880, the deposits were located, claims were staked. There was a lot of activity for about 25 years, 1880 to 1905. But again, these were small, relatively small ore bodies, and they were exhausted pretty much by 1905. And then the first phase of mining was over by 1911. The district was then dormant until another very brief attempt from 51 to 53, where economic mining was attempted. It must not have been very successful because it didn't last long. So in 53, those operations ceased, and available records indicate about $1 million worth of production to date. Again, not a lot. So currently there are 4 patented claims that were formerly owned by ASARCO, now owned by Grupo Mexico. Also, the BLM out of Las Cruces has been periodically sending contractors up there to do reclamation and backfilling, which is unfortunately, removing, like so many places, is removing, locations where we've been able to find stuff before. So it's kind of a race against time in some ways. And finally, a couple years ago, several unpatented claims were staked by Philip Simmons and other New Mexico collectors for the purpose of extracting mineral specimens. Okay. This is a shot of myself, 2014, looking in a southerly direction towards Cooks Peak. There's a lot of people actually hike up to the top of this thing, and I'd like to do that. I've never done it, but I bet it's got to be a heck of a view, as prominent as this thing is. It's just a really neat, remote, high desert location. I really like camping up there. The digging is fun. I first started going up there in 1981, and have been up there a lot of times since then. Okay. Here's a picture of Tom Massis taken in the late 80s. The workings, the ones that are still accessible, are very small. A lot of them are partially backfilled with mine waste. Ventilation is typically poor. It's dusty, but The material is good enough that it just keeps enticing us to go in there and keep digging. Okay. There were formerly had been a fair number of vertical shafts in the various deposits in the district. Most of them, unfortunately, are backfilled or have collapsed. This one was still intact. Again, in about 2014, I decided to drop into this to see if there was anything to be had. It was about a 50-foot drop. Unfortunately, it was nothing more than a completely mined out sulfide pod. There wasn't a single thing to be had in there. No fluorite, no nothing. But you got to look. You never know. Okay. So here's the the kind of fluorite that you find here. Two phases. The first phase is this kind of a blue-gray cubic material, and then obviously depositional characteristics changed pretty dramatically in the mine, and resulting in the deposition of this really dark purple octahedral material. Okay. Here's a very nice piece that was collected by a longtime New Mexico collector, Chris Cowan, back in the late 80s. I was able to buy this off of Chris a while back. It's a fairly large piece. This one is exactly as the way it was found. These things, the only cleaning they really need is they might have a little bit of clay adhering to them, which is just easily removed with a water gun. These can also be commercially improved. You can work these surfaces with an air abrasive to smooth them out. You can put them in the sun because as you can see, it's a very dark purple fluorite, which makes them a really pleasing rose color. A lot of people like that material, but for a piece like this is such an outstanding example. I'm not going to do a thing to it. This is the way nature made it, and that's the way it's going to stay. Okay. Here's another example of this first phase of fluorite. This, again, the color isn't real thrilling. Kind of a blue-gray with these modified corners. This is really, really distinctive stuff, and if you know material from this locality. There's a little, as you can probably see, a hint of purple on the edges, just a nice plate. Okay. And finally, the second phase of fluorite typically has this bottle green core with the final growth of the dark purple material. I presume what happened here was hydrothermal solutions etched away the dark purple material, thereby exposing this really pleasing bottle green core. Again, you can see it's growing on this earlier phase of more blandly colored fluorite. Okay. Okay, this is over in the Jose subdistrict. In 1997, my friend, our mining partner, Brian Huntsman, and myself located a nice pocket of quartz epimorphs over calcite and decided it was worth mining. So at the time I had this gas-powered hammer drill, so this was a combination of hand digging and using more energetic materials, shall we say. So I was, the problem, obviously ventilation was an issue. This was in a dead end, a very tight dead end, small drift. And we ended up trying to use a gas-powered leaf blower to ventilate this thing, sucking air from a more major drift that had clean air. And that worked fine as long as the wind was blowing outside. But when the wind stopped blowing, the atmospheric conditions went south in a hurry, as you can see from this picture. So, next. So after breathing that kind of crud all day, I can tell you I was not feeling very chipper. It's kind of crazy what we do for mineral specimens sometimes, I got to tell you, when I look back on these. What I do remember, though, is when we were out there, Comet Hale-Bopp was prominent in the northern sky. Do you guys remember that comet? It was spectacular, and this is a real dark sky part of New Mexico, and it was magnificent. I wished I'd gotten a picture of it. Special thing. Okay. Here's a good example of one of these quartz epimorphs after calcite. For the most part, the calcite has been completely removed by natural processes. These things are really delicate. They're hard to get them out without being damaged. This is an undamaged specimen in my collection, so it was worth a while. It was worthwhile. Okay. Okay, now let's move on to the Smoky Quartz locality, which is west of Rio Doso and north of Sierra Blanca Peak. It's in Lincoln County, New Mexico. Okay, let's hang that for a second. Okay, so This is Sierra Blanca Peak itself. It's almost 12,000 feet. It's an enormously high alpine region in southern New Mexico. And there's another smoky quartz locality. These are the Capitan Mountains. They run kind of in an east-west direction. And that's called Mina Chito Estrella. And that place produces fairly pale, smoky Japan law twins. And people often will get these two localities confused, but the smoky quartz is completely different from the two. Okay, Chris? Google Earth image looking in a southwesterly direction. There's Sierra Blanca Peak to the left. That's the Ski Apache downhill ski area, and the actual quartz locality is where I have SBQ there on that high north-south ridge running north of Sierra Blanca Peak. That's in the distance, that's the Valley Fire's lava flow, about 5,000 years old, pretty recent, and then that's the north end of White Sands. Okay? So the geology, these smoky quartz crystals, from my field observation, occur both in very rounded myrolitic, obviously to me gas bubble type cavities, but also in angular breccia cavities, which I think have been produced from faulting and brecciation of these dikes that these things occur in. The minor accessory minerals include green octahedral and white cauliflower fluorite, we call it. Also little apatite needles and quartz and not much else. The host rock these are southwest to northeast silicified dikes in 29 million year old Three Rivers syenite stock. Again, it's a high alpine location. The collecting site is about 10,600 feet. And in the summer, especially during monsoon season, it can get pretty dicey up there when the lightning starts coming down. It can be fairly dangerous at times. Okay? History about this place. The research that has been done indicated that claims were staked from 43 to about into the 70s for this and other deposits in the area. It's our understanding that these quartz crystals were sold to local collectors. In 1979, the U.S. Geological Survey published a bulletin. What they were doing was doing an economic mineral evaluation as a precursor to establishing this area as a wilderness. So the White Mountain Wilderness was set up by regulation, and in December 1983, new claims were prohibited in the wilderness area. Okay, moving to 1987. In the summer of 87, 3 collectors, basically using the USGS publication, were able to locate this deposit and basically spent the entire summer up there collecting a heck of a lot of quartz. They were working with Wayne Thompson out of the Phoenix area to market the material, and they debuted it at the Tucson show in February 1988. Unfortunately, there were one or more people who worked for the feds who somehow recognized where the stuff was coming from and put out the word and set off a series of confiscations. The problem was that it was construed as being a commercial activity in a wilderness area, which very clearly it was. You know, it was a pretty serious mining operation. So anyway, the thing got quite controversial. From 1987 to 93, collectors continued to work at the locality. Specimens were confiscated by authorities on occasion. This happened to us one time as well when we were up there. We were able to challenge them in court, though, and get our material back, fortunately. In the fall of 91, there was a Min Record article that was written by Tim Hansen and Bob Thompson. It's quite interesting if you want more information on this deposit. And then finally, in January of 93, the area was officially closed to collecting by federal regulation. What happened was when we beat them in magistrate court in Alamogordo, they realized they were on a pretty shaky ground to keep people out of there. So the Forest Service people actually went to members of Congress and got a regulations passed specifically prohibiting quartz collecting in this locale. It's really unfortunate. So it's been a controversial place. It's too bad because it's really, really world-class quartz from my perspective. So, okay. Here's a view from the locality taken in the late 80s. That's, again, looking to the southwest into the Tularosa Basin. That's the northern end of White Sands, there in the far distance. As you can see, it's a high alpine locality. That's about 4,000 foot of elevation difference between where this picture was taken in the valley floor below. Okay. So these are surface pockets. They've been subjected to, eons and eons of freeze-thaw cycles, lots of erosion, that sort of thing. So when you open up these things, almost all of the crystals have spalled off the walls of the pocket and are laying in the bottom of the pocket dirt and mud. So the trick is to just very carefully go through, that debris in the bottom of the pockets. A wooden digging stick is a good way to do it to keep from dinging them. And as you can see in this picture, that dirt is just loaded with crystals. One problem with this, because these are surface pockets, a lot of this material is naturally damaged. If you were able to, it could get probably further into the mountain, into fresher rock, I'm sure you'd start to get into cavities where the crystal stuff is still intact on the walls, and it would be in a lot better condition. So really minimal or undamaged pieces from here are pretty hard to get, and they're prized by those of us who, when we can find them. Okay? So this is a picture of, this is Mason Estes. This is a guy that I met in the late 80s in Albuquerque. And we did quite a bit of collecting trips together. He was a really good field digger. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2000. It was a real shame. This is a picture of him holding a very nice small matrix specimen. Okay? And that's the picture of the piece. Really good example in excellent condition from the locality. Okay. This is one in my collection found in the late 80s. It's really nice. It's in very good shape, and also it's that main crystal, as you can see, is a doubly terminated crystal. Really nice picture by Aaron Delventhal, who did a lot of the photography for this talk, or some of it.
Looks like a painting.
Yeah. Next. Doubly terminated crystal. DTs are fairly uncommon up there. I'm not going to say they're rare, but when you find them, they almost always have milky tips. And this one's unusually good because the tips are clear, and you can see, and it's also has little or no dings. It just has this these striking phantoms that's so distinctive of this material. Once you know it, you know exactly where it came from. Okay. Accessory minerals. Here's a green octahedral specimen on a really fine smoky point, ready to mark piece. This green fluorite is pretty rare up there, but you do find it on occasion. And when we get these really nice combination pieces, they're highly prized. Again, you can see in this piece that really, really striking the phantoming effect that you get on all this material. Okay. Here's a spiky plate. This is in my collection with about a 3 centimeter octahedral fluorite on one side, again in very good condition. So pretty unusual piece, pretty rare. Okay. Pardon?
How big is it?
17 centimeters. You may not be able to see it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's fourth and final location, the famous Blanchard mine. It's in the Hansenburg Mining District, near the little community of Bingham in Socorro County, New Mexico. It's about, 40 or so miles southeast of Socorro. A lot of people have been there, including, I'm sure, quite a few people in the audience here. Okay, so it's the Blanchard mine in the Hansenburg District. It's on the western side of the Sierra Escura mountain range, and again, just south, about 5 miles south of Bingham. Okay, so in the Hansenburg district, the 3 primary mines, both from a commercial and a specimen standpoint, are the Royal Flush on the north, the Mex-Tex there in the middle, and then the Blanchard workings on the south. Now, there are a number of really fortuitous things that happened that allowed this place to be accessible to collecting. Number one, the White Sands Missile Range was set up in the late 40s. And fortunately, this was a really active mining area then. So what they did was they excluded 1 square section of land out of the missile range. So the missile range boundary runs, and there's a notch, a 1 square mile notch, and that's where these mines are. If it hadn't been for that, these mines would have all been inaccessible. So, okay. Okay, a bit about the geology. Primary mineralization, fluorite, barite, and galena, with chalcopyrite and sphalerite being the primary metallic sulfides. As a lot of you know, there are numerous secondary lead, copper, and zinc minerals, and most notably from a collecting standpoint, linerite, brochantite, cyanotrichite, wolfenite, hemimorphite, etc. Ray, how many species have been identified there now?
Okay.
How many species have been identified at the mine?
Roughly 50.
About 50 species so far. Undoubtedly, there are more. So these cavities are hosted in Pennsylvanian age, about 315 million year old Council Springs limestone. This Council Springs layer, which is about 15 to 20 foot thick, it's very early. It's a shallow marine deposit. It must have been either sea level dropped or it was uplifted. And a lot of these caverns, small caverns, developed in the layer. So the Council Springs was pre-prepared early on for open space. The deposits occur primarily. The hydrothermal fluids came up along deep-seated north-south faults, which are related to the east side of the Rio Grande Rift. Okay. History of this place, archaeological research indicates that prior to 1881, the deposits were worked by Native Americans, probably for glazes for their pottery. By 1881, more modern prospectors had entered the area and staked claims. And then from the late 1800s to about 1984, various exploration and mining operations were undertaken at the properties. The most notable of which was from 1958 to 1960, the Sunshine Mining Company out of Idaho, Boise, Idaho, did a major exploration project there. They did a bunch of drilling, core drilling and air rotary drilling, and then they ran 6 tunnels, the Sunshine Tunnels that we call them today, to intercept their higher grade drill targets. And they then strip sampled all of the walls of the tunnel from front to back. Did a bulk tonnage kind of analysis, decided that the grade just wasn't good enough. They must have been after, I presume, argentiferous galena. Problem is there's almost no silver. There's little or no silver in this place. So they basically walked away. We know what they did because we have all of their records, their maps, their drill records, their progress reports, the whole thing. They spent about $250,000 on this property and never mined anything. But that's another very, very fortuitous thing that happened because they ran these tunnels, they penetrated through the mineralized zones and just left all the reserves in place. So there's still all this. This is by no means a mined out property. There's still a lot of mineralized reserves that are still here. Fortunately, for us mineral collectors, it's always been a struggle economically. So it's a good thing. So from 87, when Ray and Brian and Robert Dickey staked the current claims, there's been a lot of mineral collecting by ourselves and by our friends. A lot of people have been down there using both hand tools and heavy equipment. Okay. This is a historical photograph taken in World War I time frame, 1917, showing a mill and a gravity tram. You can see a pretty substantial mill was built at the property. This is still a really remote place now, again surrounded by 3 sides by the missile range, but you can imagine in 1917 it was really remote. One of the big problems here has always been a lack of water. There's no surface water whatsoever, so I suspect for this milling operation, I really wonder where they got their water. They may have had to haul it in. I really don't know, but it's always been a big problem for economic mining here. Okay. So as I said, there's been a lot of people at the mine over the years, including these ne'er-do-wells, a few of which are in the audience. So on the left there, that's Bob Jones. This is November 1988. That's Ray DeMarc, and then Peter Bancroft, Barb Munchin, and Marty Zinn. Ray,
I got around in those days.
yeah, Ray hosting a field trip in the Sunshine No. 1 tunnel. Okay. This is another local character. A lot of people who have been out there, who were going out there in the early days, knew who Sam was. Certainly Tony did. Sam and Vera Jones owned the rock shop at Bingham. And he was kind of a self-appointed caretaker and, the watchman for people who went into the district, especially, what's that?
After Ora died.
After Ora, yeah. This would have been, 1970s?
Yeah, because late 60s, she was still alive.
Yeah, so Jim was remarking that a woman by the name of Ora Blanchard and her husband had claims on that's just where the name the Blanchard mining comes from. They had mining claims out there. He died. She stayed out there. This is way before my time and lived pretty much as a hermit. And she would allow people to go up there and collect, as I understand it. And she would take, maybe a few specimens that people found as a way to help support herself. She passed away, and then I guess Sam and Vera Jones showed up, moved out there and lived at the rock shop there at Bingham. And Sam was a pretty, one of these typical country guys, rough, tough sort of guy. But once you, like a lot of these kind of people, once you get to know them, and they get to know you, and they know that you have a right to be out there, then it's no problem. We never really had any kind of a problem with Sam. He was really a character, though. Okay. So we found a lot of pockets in the decades, that we've had this place. This was a particularly noteworthy find. I was poking around in '95 in one of the sunshine tunnels and moved a few loose pieces of rock, and lo and behold, it opened up into this big mineralized bug that it was a horizontal, more or less a horizontal thing that went back about 20 feet, and it's still going. It's just pinched down quite a bit, but the entire ceiling of this thing was covered with large dark fluorite and galena crystals, highly altered galena crystals. Okay. So what we did, fortunately, most of them were cracked. They were attached to about a 6-inch thick layer of silicified limestone. Fortunately, most of them had not dropped to the bottom of the pocket, so we had a bunch of this thick foam. We were able to stuff this foam in there and drop these things, onto foam rubber and then get them out without damaging them. Okay. Here's myself showing a couple of the really nice pieces. So those of us involved in this, we were interested in keeping the really good small stuff, but none of us collect giant pieces like the one there on the right. So we were looking around going, well, what the heck are we going to do with all this stuff? And it was Ray DeMarc's idea that we should contact a museum and see if they'd want to use this stuff for a crystal cavity reconstruction, which we all thought was a really good idea. So contacted the museum in Socorro. They thought about it and got back to us as they said, I think we got enough Hansenberg material. So we contacted the Natural History Museum in Albuquerque, and they ended up buying all these big specimens from us with the idea and the hope that they would do a crystal cavity reconstruction like they've done, the really good crystal pocket reconstructions they've done at the Denver Museum. Unfortunately, the two people who were driving that, she died, and he moved on to another job out of state, so the whole thing just languished. I saw this material a couple years ago. It's in good shape. They're taking good care of it. It's being safely stored in one of their warehouses, but I don't really know if they're going to do anything with it or not. Just hard to say. Okay. So this is I think we did a total of 6 of these excavator digs. Sometimes things just don't go as planned. We had this rental machine delivered to the bottom of the hill. I was actually operating it. I drove it up the hill and was moving it into our first target. And all of a sudden, I noticed the thing wasn't acting right. And I looked down and I thought, oh no. So what had happened is one of those, you can see the pins that hold the track segments together. One of those pins broke. And so it dropped a track. So at that point, all we could do is spin around and scratch and claw. We couldn't move the thing a bit. So this is a goofy picture of Brian Huntsman trying to make the best of definitely not a good situation. Anyway, again, like Pine Canyon, sometimes it just doesn't work out. So the last big dig we did there was in July of 2013. There was one of the adits on the property, the Portalis adit, there was no closure on it. It was actively caving. We knew people were going in there. We were really concerned that somebody was going to get hurt or perhaps killed. And in fact, somebody almost did get killed in there a number of years before then. So we decided to go ahead and mine out the thing and then backfill it. So we, again, partnered up with Mark Kilbasso there on the left. That's Brian Huntsman. Jürgen Tron, a longtime from Germany, a longtime friend of Mark's. That's Ray sitting on the tailgate. And then Bruce Barlow next to him. And just a really good crew of guys to do a project like this. This was about a 3-week operation. So we were hoping that we would mine enough material to be able to pay for it, maybe make a little money, maybe get some pieces for our own collection and take care of this safety issue. Okay. So this is a picture looking towards what remains of this portalis adit. That wooden ore bin was probably built World War II time frame. It's still at the site. This is we actually had 2 excavators out there on this one, one with a hoe and one with a hammer. So it was proved to be a pretty effective combination. It was quite a successful dig. Okay, a few pretty rock pictures just to give you an idea of the variety of fluorite that occurs here. This is a very nice deep purple cubic specimen in Ray's collection. Okay. Here's one that I found back in 2007. The architecture on this thing is really outstanding. This is on the cover of the Symposium proceedings. Really a very good piece in great condition. Okay. Another one that I found, what was interesting about this was that galena crystal was entirely encased in caliche. I didn't even know it had a galena crystal on it. So in that case, you strip it off with obviously remove the caliche with muriatic acid, and lo and behold, this thing showed up. This is actually a pretty shiny galena crystal. Usually they're pretty dull, but in this case, it must have just been protected from surface alteration by the caliche. Okay. Here's a really, really good piece, large specimen, 22 centimeters. In my collection, the color on this is a little oversaturated. The fluorite's really not quite this dark, but still a very pleasing color of purple, modified cubes on white quartz. Okay. We also get these green varieties. This one was recovered 10 centimeters. For those who can't see the dimension, this was recovered also during the 2013 dig. Just a really unusual blue-green color. Okay. This is a Ray DeMarc specimen. This was also recovered in 2013. We all agree that this was probably the best piece that was found. And this thing was perfectly clean. I mean, it just required a water wash, and that was it. No acid work or anything. So just a very protected pocket. Very nice piece from the portalis adit. Okay. Okay, a little bit about the the sulfates. This was a freestanding linerite pocket that was found in 1979 by Brian Huntsman. He was a New Mexico Tech student at the time, and was doing a little midnight mining and broke into this incredible linerite pocket. This incident could be a talk in itself, so I'm not going to belabor it. But anyway, the upshot is Sam Jones, the caretaker, got wind of the fact that he and a partner were in there. So they collected this material. They proceeded to haul it out. Again, this was a nighttime operation. Sam and a local sheriff, I think, were waiting for them. Guns were drawn. Fortunately, no shots were fired. Cooler heads prevailed. Anyway, all of this material was confiscated by Sam, and it was sold to a mineral dealer, Art Tatum, who had an outfit called Art Rocks in El Paso, and then it was dispersed into the ether. We think some of the stuff may have gone to the Smithsonian, maybe the museum in Paris. It just got dispersed. So about 5 years ago, this one resurfaced. I think it may have been a Miguel Romero piece at one time. These things have a pretty convoluted story, but it surfaced in something called the Hoppel collection, which I saw at Tucson maybe 5 or so years ago. It was sold by Heritage Auctions here maybe a couple years ago, and Jim and Gail Spann purchased the piece, and they now own the piece. But this set off after '79. This set off kind of a stampede in one of the sunshine tunnels to see if they could find more of this. And a lot of rock has been moved in there. And there's never been a freestanding pocket like this found since. There's been a lot of linerite found, but nothing like this. So far, this is a one-time shot. Are there other pockets like this in the mountain? I would sure think so, but who knows? It's a crapshoot. Okay. Here's a specimen that I collected in the fall of 2006. Very thick coating of linerite. This piece, we sold this to the Mineral Museum in Socorro, where it currently resides. And that bald spot there on the top of it, next one. This was sitting on top of that. It's a loose flake of 9.5 centimeters, coated with this really bright blue linerite on both sides. It's a thin flake of silicified limestone. It's in my collection. Okay. Another good example, in this particular piece, this still has a core of galena, but the surface is very heavily altered to anglicite, cerussite, linerite, brochantite, and perhaps wolfenite. Okay. Other really showy things that occur, cyanotrichite. This is Ray's piece. These very, very delicate puff balls. These things are hard to collect because they're so darn fragile, but really beautiful things, in this case associated with galena, cerussite, and other sulfates. Okay. Wolfenite does occur at the Blanchard mine in these Hansenberg deposits. It of course pales by comparison to Arizona stuff, but does occur there. These are typically in millimeter or two doubly terminated type wolfenite crystals, in this case on quartz and residual galena. Okay. Another one-time find, late 80s, in another Sunshine Mining Company tunnel. This David Pichon out of the Midwest broke into this cavity that produced these really large V-twin cerussites. And this is a 10-centimeter piece. Pichon still has this. I know Ray has tried to get him to sell it, but he won't. Looks like it's a repaired piece, too. We've never actually seen the thing. But after this was found, Ray and Brian and others hit this cavity pretty hard and found quite a few of these V-twin cerussites. None as big as this one, I don't believe. But again, it was just an isolated pocket. We don't know why it was there, but just a one-shot deal like the linerite. But you just never know. Okay. Okay. Finally, this is just a very nice, large 18-centimeter stepped galena. Crystal with associated fluorite. The surface is heavily altered to anglicite and cerussite. This was also recovered during our 2013 dig, and I have this piece now too. Okay. Okay. Finally, this is the Sunshine number 3 tunnel. This is the one that we always take. Would have been during the field trip before the 2018 Socorro Symposium. Aaron Delventhal took this really cool picture of sunlight, the late afternoon sunlight streaming through bullet holes and openings in the mine door there. I can only guess somebody tried to break in, they couldn't do it, they got frustrated, so they just started taking pot shots at the metal. I don't know. All of these closures have now been removed. The BLM about 2 years ago took all this stuff out and installed culverts and bat gates, and so the tunnels are much more secure now. But they were also very cooperative and allowed us to keep everything open that we still wanted to access. So we were quite happy that this was done. Okay. Okay, sunset shot. This is July 2013. It was a really good monsoon season that year, and it's when the sun's going down and those monsoon cells, you guys know about this in Arizona, when those things track across the plains, it's just magnificent. There's a smell in the air, and it's just my favorite time of the year to be down at the mine. So my final note is, for those of you in the audience who might be contemplating a long-term relationship with a mineral collector, you might want to think carefully about that, because next, it might not turn out the way you think. And